Wagwan, are you there? What's good? And you know who this is, baby. The #1 podcast in America, dedicated to all you kings and queens of color, homies and homettes, shotters, woo gals, G-boys, and charges. The one and only Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode. I have the amazing panel of beautiful, handsome, and chocolatey men. We'll start off with D Black.
What's good, man? Probably the most chocolatey out of everybody.
Francis.
What up, y'all? What's goody?
Dre.
Yo, the least chocolatey out of everyone.
He's at
milk chocolate.
Tropical chocolate.
And Jen.
Yo, what's good? Wagwan, how you day? What's good? Mr. Caramel here. Chocolate caramel. You know how it is.
Yo, cuz I would say I think I'll probably fight you for the darkest one.
It depends on the time of the day.
Right? Y'all about like 70% cocoa. You know what I mean? Yeah,
oh man.
Cacao. 70 cacao.
Cool.
Hey, black is beautiful, baby.
Yeah, black is. Yeah.
It is, and it's magic, depending on who you ask. As we walk into this one today, we're going to be discussing racism in America, pretty much a seat at the table to get what our counterparts have. So before we start this up, Black Business shout out is going to be Van Lance Lemonade, a smooth, refreshing lemonade, 100% real lemonade with vanilla bean. You can check them out at vanlicelemonade.com.
I'm still waiting on my shipment, by the way.
That is coming, bro. That is coming. Yeah, no, V is good people, man. You know, I went to college with V. Great product.
Just so we say, what's the proper way to say it? I know it's like a weird. What's the right way to say it? Because it looks like it's vanilla, and is it vanilla lemonade? Is that what it is?
Yeah, V Valence.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Oh, Valence lemonade.
Valence?
Yeah, because it's like vanilla and lemonade, right? It's like vanilla.
I messed that up.
No, I was reading it and I was like, I'm glad I don't got to say it because that definitely is like a tongue twister. It's a good product. It's a good product name, but it definitely seems hard to read at first glance. But it sounds delicious. I don't know if I ever would have thought to combine vanilla and lemonade together. But it sounds like it sounds really good.
Go check it out. Go get yourself some.
Oh yeah.
Cool. How's everybody doing?
Chilling, man.
I am great. You know what? Snowfall is back. You know, I'm a big Snowfall advocate. That's a great show if you haven't seen it yet.
I'm
best show on TV.
Snowfall. I'm like, what?
Best show on TV. Not even close. I'll fight anyone who has anything otherwise to say.
I disagree. What up, though?
I don't know where we at. Come see me. Watch on TV.
Free shot on goal. Okay, let's do it.
Just like season for season, there just is no better. All hits, no misses.
Oh, I'm gonna have to check it out.
You seen like Danny Lay try to say somehow she couldn't get into it. She almost got canceled for that, bro. It's like, can't say anything bad.
You get canceled for not watching the show now.
Jesus. She was trying to say she didn't understand the show, and one of the characters on the show tweeted her. He said, "It's a black thing you wouldn't understand."
Ouch.
Man,
ouch.
That's hurtful.
But here's the thing, but even if it is a black show, right? Like predominantly black show, and again, not familiar with the show, but isn't it possible that she could learn something from it by watching it?
It is.
Yeah, but she's I mean, that'll probably be a whole nother podcast, but she's said and done a lot of really crazy things. She is I want to say she's a Latina. I think her parents are Latina.
Yeah,
and
so.
It's one of those things where she's said enough wrong things on the internet to where anytime she makes a comment, even if it's not about something being black, someone's they're always killing her online about it. So
she's on her mouth, she getting slapped.
She's just kind of like automatically canceled, I guess. She's on that ban list, like no matter what she says.
You can't get uncanceled. Is this a thing? When she go canceled, you can't get
probably uncanceled? Not her. Nah. I think she's I think she'll be okay, but Yeah, she said a lot of terrible things.
So I'm just gonna say all Black business need all group support. It's not
for sure.
We need everyone to partake in the salt. So
we need a rainbow.
I think he
coalition.
was more. Yeah, I think he was more joking. I don't think he was necessarily.
Yeah. Did he put an
he's an actor on the show, so someone says like, "I don't get the TV show," so he like takes offense to it, and he's like, "Yeah, it's a Black thing. You wouldn't understand." I think he was joking with her. I don't think he was like, "This show is only." Yeah. It wasn't like this show is only for Black people, but exactly. I think he was more joking, and this is kind of how Twitter works, right? Everyone got jokes. So it was her turn.
I guess for people that don't know what it's about, it's basically like an inside look at the crack epidemic that swept through. It's starting in LA, and now it's going to hit Arkansas. It looks like eventually it's going to go into DC and some of those major cities that were affected by the crack epidemic. And it just takes the account of one, young guy's journey into the crack game and how he's like the pioneer of it now. But I mean, people cannot like something. That's fine. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I guess she's already on that cancellation list.
I was going to say, not AR Kansas, man.
Well, I was going to say, if anything, and maybe this will get to the topic, but, it's not just about the whole drug. It also gets into COINTELPRO and how the government was involved. So it kind of is like the complete picture of how drugs got into America, but specifically in South Central. It was very, very crazy. It's not just the stereotypical drug TV show. It has all these other
elements.
But hat show.
That's why Chunky Wrong is the best show on. That's why I'm telling you.
I do love that show though.
Listen, I understand Black people because I have a Nigerian friend. Okay.
My friend is Black.
Wow. I can't wait to pull that one out. I cannot wait till I can pull that one out.
We starting with the microaggressions already.
Exactly. So has anyone ever gotten to a situation like that where someone tried to identify with your issues by saying, I have a Black friend, and they themselves are a different race or Caucasian? I'm going to throw that over to Francis.
Wow. Actually, it's kind of funny. I was just in Florida a couple weeks ago, and just to say, my friend is not racist, but he definitely did something that I called him out on it. So mind you, we were downtown Florida, Orlando, Florida, and there was this drunk Black dude, and pretty much he was trying to like connect with this guy. He was like, yo, if you cut my skin and cut your skin, we bleed red and all this stuff. And just to say, my buddy was also drunk. So, but I'm not giving him any excuse for what he did. So for some reason, he felt like the dude was spinning in his face and he pushed him. And he was like, get the away from me, dude. And I was like, whoa. And the Black dude that just came up to us was so mad. And I had to like pretty much pull him back. I was like, bro, I got you. I'm sorry for my friend. And in that moment, I felt like, even though, there's layers of privilege that I feel like that I noticed at that moment. I felt like I had a privilege because I have access to him and to the circle that he kind of like belonged to. And I was like, okay, I'm going to bring this topic up because even though you have a Black friend and you can like, oh, I'm friends with you and all this stuff, I'm not racist, but the way that he handled that situation, I felt like he thought, because he's friends with me and a couple other friends who are Black, he felt like he got the pass. And when we got in the car, I was holding the Black dude. I gave him a hug, hold him back against the wall because he was so furious. I was like, bro, I got you. I'm sorry that you felt that way. I will talk to him. I will use my privilege in this specific moment and get this right. So like one thing that I noticed about myself, because I've never done that before, was I realized that I can speak up about stuff that I see happen at that moment. Because when we got in the car, bro, I went in on him and I just kind of expressed myself and just told him, this is not right. He was trying to bond with you and you kind of pushed him away. And that is not what we need, especially in this moment. So I'll let somebody else.
That's good. That's
I don't know. I think that's always a tough situation too, because just to kind of speak more to my cousin's situation, like I think when it comes to like the consequence, I mean, you want to look out for somebody, but I think the like learning real life consequence is important. So, I mean, I don't want to say it no other way, but you gotta let him get his beat. So,
but he almost did. The dude told me it's one of those rough looking guys. I'm not trying to like, like kind of cast any judgment on him.
mm-hmm.
But he told me, he's like, bro, if I had a gun, I would shoot him.
Oh wow. Damn,
I was like, bro, I held him against the wall and I gave him a hug, and the dude was almost crying, bro. So like I was mad because of it. And I was like, okay, I gotta like talk to him about this. I mean, the one thing I do appreciate from him that is the next day he came to me and apologized. So I really do appreciate that.
So at least he was like aware of, of his wrongdoings, and he kind of stepped up to it. So I feel that, yeah.
Yeah, because we were kind of going back and forth in the car, and he didn't realize what he did wrong in that moment. And I was able to kind of shed some light on my views on what just happened. And so we had a conversation about it the next day. So that was good.
Do you think like it's like an unconscious bias that he may have had that's not aware of, being that of his background and his pretty much ethnicity?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, because one, I would say he's also is drunk, so like, our judgment at that moment is, sometimes questionable.
Dude, yeah.
But I felt like that was such a key moment where we don't know what impact it could have had on that dude's life moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the way he treated him, something, we never know what the negative impact on his life will be moving forward.
That's funny.
We can measure that.
Yeah.
I was going to say that sometimes I think I'm glad, Chunky, you mentioned like the unconscious bias or whatever, because I think sometimes we put everything in like underneath a racist umbrella, right? Where sometimes I think it's like it's more nuanced than that, right? That act itself probably wasn't quote unquote racist, right? But it was some unconscious bias or what, you know what I mean? So, and that's like an interesting thing is I think it's like, I almost wish that we had like other words for things, right? I know we're talking about racism, but there's other words, the same thing where like we automatically put everything underneath one umbrella when it's probably, it can be that, right? But it may not be especially when we talk about like, can Black people be racist? Or, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff, right? So it almost is like it's almost like a term that we just apply to everything, but it may not necessarily be racist. It may be.
To tag team on that one.
We can't be racist. It's reverse racism. Just putting that out there.
No, it's not even racism on our part, because how can we be racist when we don't control resources or assets? It's impossible.
Yeah,
we can display prejudice, but we can't sit here and deny somebody an opportunity. We don't have the majority. So
I mean, like my question.
I think you can. I beg to differ on that one. I would say like if you have a Black-owned business, you can be racist towards another ethnicity because you control that prejudice, right? I think. Go ahead.
Prejudice. Yeah, I would say that leans more so on prejudice, like discrimination. Like, okay, I think we tend to kind of put all these terms under one umbrella. And for sure, they definitely stem from acts of racism and that era, but which we still live in today, which has gone mostly systemic. But we can display prejudice. Yeah, we can say, hey, you know what? He's white. I'm not going to serve him. However, I'm not stopping white people from opening their own businesses or getting resources to do so. That's
a really good point. That's a really good point.
I hear you, but I think I don't think racism is targeted towards specifically Black people. I think it's targeted towards any race, hence racism.
That's anyone non-white, of course. Yeah, and that puts us all in the group of marginalized people. Yeah,
cool. So I think we're saying the same thing. Cool.
So I do have a question because I was thinking about that because I think the general understanding is Black people cannot be racist, but like, can there be minute level of racism? Like you said, Chunky, where it's like a segment of people who do have control over something can, I know it's like tendencies of racism, but like, cause I was thinking like, can that be, cause you do control and influence resources and power at that minute level, maybe not from a systematics level, but that was kind of like one of the questions that I was kind of like that I was kind of asking myself, You
mean like in a controlled space, right? Like
like how does that impact? How does that impact? That specific situation because you do manage the resource and the system that occurs, I guess, from that space that you maybe like from a corporate level, if you're like the CEO or lead a significant level of your division, you can somehow like influence how people of whatever race or group are treated. So I was just thinking like, I don't know. I mean, that was the question, I guess, that I was kind of wondering, like, how does that kind of fall in? So if we could have a minute level of racism within.
I was gonna say, D Black, you want to take that one?
Like a sprinkle of racism.
It's kind of like seeds of racism. Oh my gosh. So kind of like I don't know, like Jay-Z not letting. No, stop playing. Let me before Dre looking at me like, you better not talk about my Jay-Z. No, I think that's actually a really good question. I think when it comes to those type of situations, it's kind of interesting because I personally can't attest to it, but if we have like if say minority black person X, as X, like if he gains control over a certain segment of a community, let's say he gains control over Brooklyn, you know, like I think there's been mobsters in the past and things like that they control those areas, and then they kind of control the influx of, you know, businesses and of businesses and things like that, or I don't know. I just can't attest to it, but I feel like everyone has the ability to be racist. You know, it's not just necessarily something that you can associate with, you know, just being, you know, I guess white people doing it to black people or white people doing it to other minority groups. But I do think that it's possible. You know, anyone who gets into a position of power, you know, I think it's common human nature to kind of always look down on another group, whether it's okay or not. You know, I don't think it's okay. But, so again, I can't attest specifically to it.
Yeah, and I guess just to add on to that, like the example that was mentioned earlier, that would be someone being practicing discrimination, not necessarily
racism.
Right, racism. So I think that's where Black people can be. So when we use that example of like a Black person not hiring someone for whatever reason, to me that's discrimination, right? That's not necessarily like racism, right?
Yeah, racism is more like I'm gonna stop you from getting any job whatsoever. Like, the power to do that is racism. Just because you're Black, you're not like me, so you're not gonna get any opportunity.
And I think I look at it more as like a systemic, like racism as like a system, not necessarily like one-on-one things, right? You know, so to me, like redlining, right? Or, you know, I was learning about like environmental racism. I don't know if you've heard about that, right? Where basically there's this woman who there's this developer who dropped off 10 stories worth of like shingles from like a house in like her backyard, right? And it was legal for him to do that, right? Because this area was zoned this way. So to me, that type, you know, the system allowed that to happen. And to me, that's when we're talking about, that's when I'm thinking of racism. And maybe we need to take a step back and maybe define what racism is, because I think we all kind of have different kind of views on.
Yeah, exactly.
Systemic racism, correct. That is a part of racism, right? Hold on real quick. I just lost what I was doing. So definition of racism by the Merriam-Webster dictionary, I believe that a race is fundamentally determinant of human traits and capacities, and that other racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race, right? So there is the second definition, the systemic oppression of a racial group to a social, economic, and political advantage of another. Mm-hmm. So I think we're both correct on this, right? And it's the situation that we're in that really defines what's going on.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I guess to chime in on the question about, you know, the original question on the, you know, my friend is Black, so I can't be racist. I think that's like an excuse that's also thrown in there in that knapsack of protection, along with, oh, I don't see color. You know what I mean? And that's just like a complete denial or wanting or ignorance towards someone else's issues, because you're just saying there, okay, I have a shield of immunity because I side with someone that is Black. Well, is that the only reason why you befriended him then? Because he was Black? So you can just use that as a pass. So to me, it's kind of like tapping into those opportunities or chances to kind of teach somebody. Like, that's ultimately thrusted upon us to do so, but to me it's just another excuse. Like, look at me for the content of my character and not for the color of my skin, because now you're just basing everything on my color, you know, not caring for my experiences or what I've gone through. What are you gonna say, Dre?
Yeah, I was gonna say there was one instance where I had to have a conversation with like I'll say a family member, right? Where, you know, I think sometimes, and this is, it sucks to be in this situation, right? As a person of color, right? When you're having to tell a white person that what they're saying is racist or discriminatory or prejudiced, however you want to, you know, term it, right? And to me, the easiest analogy that I think worked for me is like just ignoring race, which I know that we can't ignore race, right? Because I know there's those weird people who say I don't see color, right? Which is the craziest thing to me. I just looked at it as like I just tried to like, and this is, I'm gonna do a trigger warning because like this is the only analogy that I could think of, so I apologize if anyone's had sexual abuse in the past, but right, like someone who is a rapist, right, can have women in their family, right, but can still rape a woman, right? So like to me, that those are not one and the same thing, right? You can have a woman who's close to you, but you can still harm a woman, right? So to me, that's no different from like, oh, I have a black friend. It's like, yeah, but you could still harm other black people.
Exactly.
Right? You can still,
yeah.
So like, so sorry, that's a really terrible analogy. I'll think of a better one, but that's the easiest way that I was able to get across to that person, like what they were, you know, that those two are not
one and the same,
right?
Yeah.
You can have more than one thing can be true, right?
I would say on the opposite side of that, right? So I did know someone that had an issue with another black person, and he came out and was like, well, I have a black friend. And their reaction was the same, like, you know, I don't care, you know, what you're saying to me doesn't resonate correctly. But this white guy was actually a good dude. And he was kind of had his back against the wall because he didn't want to argue with him. He didn't want to seem oppressive. So he threw that out. But in retrospect, was it the best decision? No, but he tried to buy an end, right? Like, I know enough about black people, and he admitted that he sees color, and he should have just opened up and just said that. But there were a couple of things that he said afterwards which made a lot of sense. Like, I understand that because of your height, because of your size, because of the tone in your voice, people are going to treat you differently, and there's no bullshit about that. People don't like you because the color of your skin, and they don't know how to react to it, so they react negatively. So sometimes when people are put in such a tight situation, they may just say that. So I'd say that not every person who opens up and says it is a person that is trying to, you know, relate when they really can't. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, because who knows, if you're in a tight spot, what will come out your mouth? It may not come out right, but your intent is different.
Well, I mean, how we react under pressure also sometimes reveals who we really are. It's the same saying where, you know, they say a drunk mouth speaks a sober mind. When you don't have those inhibitions or anything prohibiting you from saying how you really feel, I mean, who's to say that he's not having these conversations in private when he's not around you? Like, if the fact that he pulled that out in that situation, that's when you really stand up and say, you know what, I'm gonna show who I really am. In my opinion,
that same energy.
Exactly. And say, you know what, you know, screw that. Not just, oh, this is my my duress button. I don't know what else to say. You know, that shows there may be something he's missing there.
So it's like fight or flight, right? So some people, when they're put in a tight situation, they'll fight it out. Other people will just run. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it kind of takes that extra couple of seconds to kind of figure that person out and not automatically jump on them like, oh, well, you have no business saying that. Okay, what are you trying to say to me? What are you trying to get across? If you haven't been in enough situations that puts you in that distress situation, then yeah, you're going to keep saying the same thing. But if you've been through it enough, you're like, okay, after 5 times of saying this, I had a negative reaction. Let me figure out something different to say. And to me, that just comes out of just repetition. It's unfortunate, but like I said, I give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I'm just saying sometimes we don't get that benefit of the doubt. So it's always like we have to be the ones who take a step back and say, oh, I need to look at it from your standpoint. And it's like, no, like, you know what I mean? I know what you're saying, and I get what you're saying, but it is really unfortunate that sometimes we're in the situation where we need to like be the level-headed one, and we don't have the opportunity to be, in a lot of cases, we don't even have the opportunity to be given the benefit of the doubt. Right. You know, like, I've seen enough videos where white men are like just going off on a police officer on being pulled over, and I'm like, that guy, I see that happen.
He will walk away.
Where they get the benefit of the doubt, right? And I can't have a bad day, right?
I don't think it's benefit of the doubt. I think it's just white privilege.
Of course, I'm trying to just like 100%. Lighten it up and say like,
don't hit him hard.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. That could be it, right? Because their humanity is seen as like, oh, Johnny is just having a bad day, right? You know, so I think, I mean, obviously, Francis, I think you did a really excellent job on being in that situation. It's never fun to be in that situation as well, right? Like, you know, like that's your friend, right? You know, and sometimes you don't even, you know, I think we all have friends outside of our race who we think we know, right? But you don't really know them until you're in like that type of situation, when they're interacting with someone who's not you, right? Or someone who's in your circle, right? And same thing for you, Chunky. I think, you know, I think you also handled that situation a really good way. But it really sucks to be in that situation.
Yeah, just to rebound off of what Jay was saying, and I think that's important too, because I mean, I'm an equal opportunity person, you know. I mean, I feel like
you have equal opportunity to people up. So what you telling me?
And I do know, but real talk. I mean, I feel like, you know, if you want to be that person, like they're not going to learn until a lot of people don't learn until like the situation really hits them in the face. And I understand that, like, you know, with friend, like in your situation, you're trying to look out for your homie at the same time, trying to balance the situation. But the thing is that you're not always going to be there. And in the situation that he wants to wild out, you know, and, you know, be disrespectful, like, and then he learns the consequences of those situations. That's when you truly be like, okay, me saying I have a black friend don't shield me from nothing, you know. Me like, just having black homies,
he ain't your friend then, because you about to catch his whooping.
Just for the record, you and your black friend can get fucked up if you acting wrong. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, let's just keep it a buck, right? Like, yeah, you and your black friend can get fucked up if you're not. If I've seen those situations too, right, where a white person says something crazy and then his black friend is with him and they're like, you let him say that? Like, he got it too, right?
That's actually, Dre, that's actually a really good point, because black people will look at it like, oh, really? You gonna let him disrespect us?
Yeah.
You gonna let him disrespect all of us, bro? I
have two examples. I mean, recently, I was listening. I was at a place where I heard this dude said an N-word while I was listening to music. And for me, you know, like, because I know, like, so there's a couple points. I know there are white people who feel like there are certain black people who are one of the good ones, and they like put the rest of the black people in this subcategories, you know. And also, like, one thing that I personally feel like I've been doing more of is more vocal about when I see something wrong, because prior, you know, I used to just kind of go by my day and just kind of live with my issues and just trying to navigate life as a black man, and not really have those tough, uncomfortable conversation with other people, even amongst my black friends. You know, we don't focus so much on talking about the issues that we are dealing with. And sometimes we kind of lose out on those opportunities to teach each other and also teach the people around us. So for me, like, I feel like I've been kind of put in a couple of situations more recently where, like, I've been more vocal. Like, the guy, I heard him say the N-word while he was rapping. I was like, bro, like, yo, don't ever say that. You don't know. I'm not the type to beat you up when I heard you. I know we're going to get into the N-word one of this coming episodes, but I was like, there are some white black dudes who will mess you up for saying that. So, and he was like, oh, my bad. And I was like, yo, don't do that. So it's like, it's just kind of crazy, man.
So my standpoint on like lyrics, I just really don't mind it. So I used to work at a bar, and Biggie's song would come on, right? Everyone's favorite part, if you don't know, now you know. And I was the only black person working there. And they would turn around and look at me like, can we say it? I'm just like, I really don't care. You can say it to this lyric, but after you say this lyric, I don't want to hear it again. That doesn't give you a free pass to say it when you feel like it. Doesn't give you a free pass when you see me, oh, what up, my N-word? Like, nah, like I'm not cool with that. So I let lyrics be what it is. It's a self-expression. I can't sit here and tell you can't recite something, right? Because it's playing.
It's uncomfortable, man. Like it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Try to get people
yeah, I was gonna say you may have thought you was the only black person there, but you gotta remember there's people who aren't always kind of black presenting, right? You can't be
it's their choice, right? That's your freedom of choice. That's your freedom of speech.
You know,
I get it.
One thing with that example is because I've actually been to that same spot with Chunky, and I think that was a time where that happened. I just looked around like, Like, and I'm looking around at everybody. They're like, and they're looking at me, but they're looking at Chunky, and they're looking at me. I'm like, bruh, I'm just not the one. I'm like, you better control you better control these people.
But like that's my personal take on it. Doesn't mean it's the right thing. That's just how I view it, right? And that's where my limits and my standards are.
But your view is gonna get somebody killed.
Yeah, but like I mean, the guy.
It's a consequence, like you said before, right?
Right. So the
Chunky
guy
said it's okay.
No.
The guy said it. The guy said it trying to connect or trying to think he was cool. He got the pass. When he said it, he looked at me and I was like, he first said it the first time and I didn't say anything. I was like, and it was itching me because like, I was like, this is something I never used to like. This is like new something I'm like developing within myself to speak up more. Mm-hmm. And he said it again. I was like, bro, you can't say that around me, man. Like I might not whoop your butt, but somebody else might. So
there is like so many things he could say to connect. But I have a question then. Like ultimately, whose responsibility is it really to teach people what to say, what not to say? Like, I mean, is it or is this something that we're born with now? Because I understand, like, for instance, majority of our podcast isn't even born in America. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like the racism that you're subjected to here is like the real racism in America, where it's systemic, as opposed to maybe you're experiencing some type of socioeconomic gap. But it's like racism wasn't really a thing for probably most Nigerians. Right. Well, as far as black and white racism wasn't really so much of a thing until you got here. So it's just like, to me, I think like it's a learning experience for everyone, especially assuming that all black people have encountered racism, which is probably another really good question.
Yeah, I think it's
like, honestly, everyone may not be educated enough to say, hey, let me break this down and explain it to you. And that could be part of the problem as well.
I think that's a really good question. I mean, I think my stance on that stuff is I'm never telling a person it's okay for them to say it just because it just doesn't feel, it doesn't sit right with me. That's just my personal thing, right? I think I also kind of look at it as just like a responsibility thing. So for instance, I think it's really dope that like you're finding yourself speaking up more. I think just like temporarily putting the pause on race stuff, right? Even when I'm like, even when I'm hanging out with my friends, right? My male men friends, right? And they say something crazy about a woman. I'm like, yo, you can't be talking like that. Like that's not cool, right? So to me, that's how I personally feel that responsibility, whether that's, you know, I don't know if everyone should have to do it, but me personally, I feel like if I hear someone saying something homophobic or sexist or whatever, and it's my friend, I feel like it's my responsibility to be like, yo, that's not cool for you to say that. Like maybe they didn't know, right? That's just me personally, right? And I know everyone jokes of me being like the father or whatever, but that's just personally like my stance. And to me, I feel like if more people took that stance, we would be in a much better situation, right? So to me, how is a white man in that situation seeing another white man saying, you know, hearing him say something crazy and he's not saying, yo, you can't say that. Like, this is why you can't say that, right? Why it has to be the black person to say you can't say it, right?
So would you give another white person the opportunity to do that, right? So let's hone back in on racism. If you see it's you, let's say it's all of us in a situation, right? And we see two white guys just having a conversation. One white guy is just saying the N-word, like hard ER at the end, and just going off about whatever. And that other white person checks him. How would that make you feel in essence that we're in their presence and we do nothing about it? Does that give you a sense of pride and understanding, like, hey, there are people out here who get it and that are willing to check each other? Or is it like, well, there's 5 black dudes standing here and we didn't say anything and we should have said something?
Well, if the guy checked him, then there's nothing for me to do, right? Like to me, and it would probably resonate with him better, right? Than if it can't be me, right? I'm 6'4", right? You know, I can't be coming over like having a conversation with him, right? Because I'm going to be looking threatening no matter what. So if I saw that situation, I would actually probably, maybe I wouldn't say anything at all, right? But you know, maybe if I was so inclined, maybe if I had a couple drinks, maybe I was send the guy a beer or something, right? Like, yo, like, you know, like, cool.
They had
like,
a couple drinks, like, shut your mouth over there.
Yeah, like, yo, that was really cool of you, right? You know, but like, I don't know. I don't think I would say something in that situation if I saw the other person check them, right?
So I'm gonna take it to a different level real quick.
Chunky, I have a comment quick. Sorry. So I was listening to an interview recently, and not too long ago, but I don't remember the name of the pastor, but he's the Hillsong pastor. He was doing an interview with another guy, and he kind of talked about how they had to kind of do a self-examination within their church and within his family, and how they are keeping accountable for when they notice people are being treated wrong and some of the biases that happens within their personal lives. And I think he has to be both sides. I think Black people also has to be open to have those uncomfortable conversations and just kind of allow everyone to have that space to be uncomfortable and just be open to, because you also want to be sensitive to their ignorance as well, and vice versa. So if we can do that, I think we'll be in a better place.
Can I say one thing about this?
No, you may not.
All right, never mind. I'm gonna be quiet.
Nah, go.
No, all right, but so I feel like we're indirectly telling people that they feel like they need to be like race police, and with being race police, even being like trying to correct somebody, it comes with its own risk and consequences. I understand we all want to do the right thing and we all want to be, encouraging people to do the right thing. But you got to think about it, even if okay, again, Caucasian person says something crazy and you try to correct them, Caucasian person now blasts you. You know what I mean? Like, you putting yourself in a position of harm that you got to also be considerate of. So before you start going out there trying to race police and got the S on your chest and you pointing out every kind of, racial injustice, you got to understand there is a risk that gets associated with that.
So at the end of the day, right?
That's why I'm on my business.
I'm like, because it's like,
if it's somebody I know, I'm saying something. I know I say something. But if it's a random person, I'm not interacting. I don't want no problems. No, sorry.
We have to be responsible for our circle. We have to
at the end of the day, f all that. I'm gonna be real with you. Like, if you want to say let's not be indirect, let's be direct and let's be honest, right?
Okay, I'm listening.
So let's hit it on the head.
Take them to church.
If someone's gonna sit here and be racist and I'm gonna walk away from it because I'm afraid of what they're gonna do to me, they're gonna continually do it, right? So even then, during the civil rights movement, they had the boycott. They felt actual pressure, right? They had dog sicked on them. They had the hole sicked on them. Even John Lewis had his skull cracked open. So you're telling me during this time where people were facing the most type of violent threat nowadays in this soft society that we live in, not to say something to somebody, not to speak up for your own race to protect other people, because your fear is just that, don't call me the N-word, I'm going to shoot you. For real?
But that's a real fear. That's a real fear.
I hear you on the fear, right? Like, and I can stand on this island by myself. And I'm cool with that.
Kudos.
That's cool, but just don't be too judgy, because you sound a little. You got the judge beat a little high. Just turn the judge beat a little bit.
Let me clarify before I pass it to Selassie.
I'm talking to Chunky. That's all. I'm just telling him to turn down the judge beat a little bit.
Selassie had real quick. I think it's important that we make a little a clear distinction. Again, anyone who's is basically like, let's take the race part out of it. Anyone who goes into the military, anyone who's willing to fight for our lives, fight for our freedoms, mad props go to you. More power go to you. But I don't want someone to try to air quotes step up and they know they don't have the mental capacity to do it, and then they drop the ball. And now they're putting themselves at risk, and then they're also putting the mission at risk, right? So if you don't got the mindset and the drive and the tenacity to do it right, then you're not supposed to be in that position.
But if it bothers you, say something. Like you're in that moment, not like, oh well, I'm not going to say anything and just going to let it pass. And Francis did it the right way. He analyzed the situation. He felt as though that's something within his means that he can speak up towards, and he spoke up towards it. It's what I'm actually saying. And that fear is there. I get it. And yes, I come off the top rope without a fucking problem with the shit that I say. But that's just my personality.
No, that's cool. But I'm just letting you know that risk, that that fear will affect people's decisions.
Let's give Glenn the floor.
My bad.
Yeah, because I hear what you're saying as far as the race policing aspect, because a part of that also indicates that you only see things in the window of race, and not all issues are race issues. So if you're going to go out there being the race police, it's just like that requires a part of you to look only in the context of race. And that can be very dangerous, especially when not every issue is race-based. And sometimes I think with the Black society as a whole, the issue is accountability, not being able to accept that, hey, we need to educate ourselves on things a little bit more. I mean, we only represent but such a small number of the entire United States. Yeah. So it's just like, I think in order for things to change, it requires us to be educated as well, as you're indicating. That responsibility of going around and policing that. I wouldn't even say so much policing, but stepping up to say something, just make sure you're well equipped to handle that situation.
Yeah.
Like, I guess you're saying, but also not always looking at things at the context of race, because not everything is a racial situation.
And then what about those situations where people that like instantly jump to race, and then you got to pull them back too.
Exactly.
But that's on them, right? That's their level of ignorance. And what Glenn's saying, if they're not educated enough, they shouldn't step into that realm, right? You can't.
I guess how do you know how educated you are?
So let's say that, right? So let's say it's a situation and level of education that if you're the quote unquote race police, you see everything in a racist manner, right?
Yeah.
But realistically, it's just like you're trying to eliminate how many racist things happen in front of you, and you analyze the situation like this isn't racism, this is prejudice, this is discrimination, or this is two people just going at it. There's nothing in the situation that pretty much screams racism. It's just a banter between two people, an argument between two people. There's no reason for me to step into it. And as educated you are, you understand and you can figure that out. You can actually break it down for fundamentally what it is. You don't see everything in a racial tone. You see this as like, this is an argument, this is a problem, it'll resolve itself. And I don't need to be a part of it. But if everyone looks at it in a simple phase of just like everything is racism, there's a little bit of ignorance in that, right? Because you can't turn it off. You can't really see it for what its true color is. You only see it in that one lens.
Like I have a follow-up question then. Have you ever witnessed where racism has been weaponized? Because I feel like I've seen situations where, prime examples, like shorty, like, I mean, in Georgia, you know, non-African American vendor, you know, African American customer, you know, my food didn't come out right on time, is because I'm black. You know what I mean? So again, not being the racism police, you know, I stay out of those situations, you know, because again, even though that person is reading the situation, the minority is reading the African American person is reading the situation wrong, you know, but I still don't interject in that one.
No, but that's your level of education, right? You understand that one instance where that person just got served a little bit later, they just may be behind on their order. There's not something specifically targeted towards their race.
But the very dangerous part with that is that you don't always know, right? You could see it from the standpoint of, oh, it just looks like they're backed up, but there are other things that happen that you're not aware of, right? You know, there's a lot of examples of Pizza Hut and other places writing on people's receipts for their names, right? You know, there's a lot of things that like you're not always, so even from like the outside perspective, right? That black person may be wrong, but they could also be right too, right?
But I mean, that's blatant racism,
They could have went to that place. They could have went to that place a billion other times and had issues with that person, and as a result of that, that person's like, oh. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that's where it gets like super complicated because you never have the full picture of what the situation really is, right?
I'm confused. Do I mind my business or do I not?
So, and that's what we talked about before. It's the level of equipment that you have, what Glenn was saying, right? If you're not well equipped to handle that situation, you don't step into it. If you don't have all the facts, you can't say something to it. That's educational awareness in the sense of what's going on. You have to actually read the situation for what it is, and you have to make a decision. If you don't believe you have enough or seen enough, then don't step into it. I think we kind of polarize being the race police as saying that this is your sole purpose is to counter every racist interaction. But what I'm saying is that you have to make the best judgment in that. If you feel so that you can say something in it, don't be shy and just say something. But if you feel a little hesitant, then yes, you can be hesitant. And then you just educate yourself along the way. And then you'll get a better awareness in what you can step to and what you can't step to. The more things you step to, the more you'll fix. The less things you step to, vice versa. You know what I mean?
So I'm gonna go to every situation with a little notepad and I'm like, hold on, everybody.
Wow.
Tell me about the situation. What really happened here?
I mean, for me,
who's being disrespectful? Tell me the history of all this disrespect, and I'm like, and then I'll figure it out in that situation.
I mean,
I feel like
that's you, man.
Because I feel like you're approaching every situation with limited information. No matter what
you never know that. You never know the full picture.
So
like,
once
you're
again,
never gonna know.
But I fall back on
in that case, you shouldn't say anything.
Y'all motherfuckers don't say nothing. I'll take that risk.
I'm trying to go home, man.
Well, I
feel Dre. I'm trying to go home.
I'm trying to get this piece and go home, man.
I mean, all I gotta say is we all have our own, you know, privilege. You know, there's layers. I mean, like I said, I felt like I was in a place of privilege in the situation I mentioned. earlier where I could have a conversation with the guy, you know, and I think we all are placed in a situation where we do have that opportunity to kind of voice those concerns and have it. I mean, we don't have to be a race police, but whenever you are in a space of privilege where you should voice those concerns.
I don't think privilege is the word. I think you mean responsibility in that situation because that was your homie.
Let's have
my bad.
Yeah, but he does.
Let Glenn have the floor.
Well, I'm just saying, what other race has to really worry about that? You know what I mean? Like, why is it that we're the only ones that have to really equip ourselves to really worry about it? It's like you don't have, well, God forbid you say anything against Jews or any, you know, that's trouble right there. But it seems like we're the only ones that really have this problem. And I guess the simple answer to this situation is just like, rather than just trying to educate the entire world, it's just like, I feel like every day we just have to continue to empower and equip ourselves and our own communities. I mean, let's speak about the facts, right? The disproportionate amount of arrest of Black people versus white people. Let's talk about how home values are lower for Black people, but they could be in the same communities as some whites. So if we could speak to those numbers, we can see that there's like more of a, I think rather than looking at the social issue, we really need to tackle the economic issue and close that gap. And I think that's where our true power will come from in that sense, to where we don't really have to rely on someone else's systems to get ahead in this world. Because let's be real, racism is not going to go away. You know what I mean? We can continue to enlighten and educate and empower people. We've been doing that for years. And it's just like, it's time for us to really step up and empower ourselves instead and put some of that focus on us and what we can do for our own communities. So I think that's where the change is going to come from.
My thing back to you is like, look at Black Wall Street, right? We made our own, we did our own, they came and burnt it down. I believe, I think Dre said it a couple of podcasts ago, like racism is just interwoven in American society. Let's just be honest and let's just be real. I still think that we still have to do a heavy amount of education, especially in schools. And it shouldn't be Black History Month. It should just be American history, because there's no way you can talk about American history without talking about any type of Black person in it, no matter who they are.
You saw what they're doing in Utah. There's a program, a school in Utah allowed parents to opt their children out.
Yeah, I saw that. That's
Black
nonsense.
I mean,
Black history classes.
And that's the ignorance that we have to deal with, right? So they all came collectively in one state and made that decision. And from my understanding, I could be completely wrong. Utah, the state itself, is majority white, is what I understand and came to know. And that I don't think will fly in New York City or Atlanta or any other big major city. And it's not disrespecting Utah, but if they decide to do that, then they can live in their bubble of ignorance, but they're going to have to step into the real world eventually. And it's going to be a culture shock. I still think we have to continue what Glenn's saying, educate ourselves first and then educate other people. We can have power to ourselves, but I'd rather just have power along with other people. I'd rather be viewed as your equal at all times, not within my own Black community. And I agree with what everyone's saying right now, but I have my standpoint of where this should stop. I think racism will end eventually, but it will take multiple generations to do so. And it starts from the youngest people to educate them, saying that this is what actually happened. It was really fucked up. It was really wrong. But you can't go out and treat people differently because you feel as though it's right. Because if that same thing was to happen to you, you wouldn't like it. So now we're turning the corner into emotional intelligence. And I think that's the hardest thing to teach people in general.
So, I mean, my question is that what do we gain from social integration then, right? Because if we're still here talking about that discussion about being treated as equal, okay, we got civil rights, we're socially integrated now. You know, I can probably get into the same school as you. But what does that really speak to the matter? Like, the reason why they attack Black Wall Street is because they know the power is truly in economics, economic sustainability. Yeah. So once we're able to provide for ourselves, we don't have to rely on anyone else. I believe there was like a Black bus line that was functioning and prior to like the integration. And once they were able to open up all of the bus lines, that bus line went extinct. You know what I mean? So that Black business is gone. So it's just like, everybody has entitled to their opinion. I'm not saying anyone's wrong in the matter, but to me, I don't think social integration helped as much as economic integration should have helped or would have helped us in propelling this situation.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on there being a shift in just trying to get economically kind of right. You know, there's still reports of, you know, Black homeowners not being able to get loans, right? You know, or prospective people who are applying for loans just being denied loan opportunities, right? You know, to be able to get a loan to get a house, right? Or even I saw another and I've just been doing a lot of research about like buying a house and all this stuff. So sorry, a lot of my examples are about that, but like also seeing stuff where like a Black couple was trying to sell their home and literally the house was selling for less just because they were Black. They literally had a white family. They hired a white family to like live in the house to then sell it. And they ended up selling it for a considerable amount more. Right. So yeah, I agree that definitely economically, I think there's a lot of things that should be as the focus should be as equal. Right. I think sometimes we're almost too focused on the social side and not necessarily as much on the economic side. I personally think we need to tackle it from both sides. But to Glenn's point, I think we probably should be, I think there needs to be a bigger concerted effort on the getting right economically. And I feel like I've seen a lot more examples of Black entrepreneurs. Like there's this one gentleman I follow on Instagram who's basically just talking about like flipping stocks, and like I'm learning about a lot from him, right? So I think there are those things, and I think hopefully we'll see more examples of people trying to teach others about being more economically empowered, because yeah, I think that's going to really be the way to
the money's really in the I mean the power is always really in the money. And I guess, and then my question is, that means as we focus on social issues, I wonder if it's like, again, when I say the man or the person, whoever, like, they probably want us to continue to focus on social issues, which basically when the conversation we're having here, because there really isn't much power in those social issues as much as the economic ones. Because prime example, like everything that happened with GameStop, when you started, you know, people started investing in GameStop, they're like, hold up. What the hell are y'all doing? Yeah. So once you start messing with the money, that's where the power really comes. Huh.
Exactly.
I think it goes hand in hand.
I'm learning something today.
For my perspective, right? So if, like, let's go back to that Moore code, right? If someone does something out of line that's racist and you check them, then there comes a balance, there comes a equality. And then if you have someone on the top that's pretty much hiring somebody else, like, oh, I'm going to hire you for less money because you're Black. And if they realize that that's wrong, or they replace someone that understands the value of equality, then more people will get hired at the same rate and get paid the same amount. If you have a realtor who's selling a home and he's like, oh, well, all these white people are saying they're going to buy their home for less as a Black person, they put that out in the street like, well, here's a problem that I'm having. These white people say that they want to buy this home because this person is Black. This is not right. This is messed up. Something needs to actually change. And then that gets out somehow, some way, like you're saying, like maybe it goes on Reddit and everyone flips over and just like, all right, you have to buy this person's house because they're Black and pay it at equal value. Like, we control a lot economically as society. And I think both of those things are interchangeable. Now, I completely agree. If we get a better economic status, things will start to change because we have money, people will listen. But at the end of the day, if we all have equal amount of money, where do we go back to? So I think it has to go along at the same rate. Maybe it's 10% economically, and then it falls by 5% socially, or vice versa. But I think both of them have to be equal at some point. How you get there, to me, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I want us to be treated equally in every single situation. You're going to hire me, you hire me at the rate that I deserve and have earned. If you're going to pay for my home, you're going to buy my home at market value. If you're going to sell me a car, you're going to sell me a car like you would my white counterpart. The same amount. Do not play me stupid. If you're going to give me a loan, give me a loan at the same rate. If I have the same credit score, same income, the same rate as my white counterpart. And that's what I look at.
Yeah. So I just want to add to your point, Chunky. I think I'm also on your side. You know, I think I may be naive, but I think our society and the world that we live in is changing, and you know, either we like it or not. You know, the generation Gen Z is changing the way things are being done. They are keeping even their parents accountable for the things they do. You know, constantly we see like stuff on social media where the kids is recording their parents and blasting them on social media, and it brings accountability to that society, that community. And so I think for me, I don't think it will happen maybe in my time and in our lifetime, but eventually I do think we are going to get in a place, because people are looking different. There's more interracial relationship. There's, eventually we're going to get to a point where we are going to get there, man. So like, it is what it is. And also with the point about, like the pay discrepancy, one thing that I've thought is, I think, one thing that I feel like maybe we don't do as Black or minority group is, dispute our pay. Because I remembered when I first got my offer,
yes,
I was a contractor. When they gave me my offer as a full-timer, they doubled my pay. At the time, I was like, oh, I can't even like dispute this. Because I felt like, okay, they just doubled my pay. Why would I like even dispute it? So I didn't dispute my pay at the moment. But I guarantee you, if those are like my counterparts, they will want more money. And I think that's what's going on between like us as Black people. We don't question what our pay is, where our counterparts are. And I think that's where, then when they give you that 2 or 4% raise every year, then that's where it kind of builds up. And over time, we see that disparities that we usually often talk about. So.
Well, that's why they have like a lot of, like in at least in the private sector, you'll see a lot of those situations where companies like are not allowed to, like, well, employees are not allowed to like discuss their salaries or anything between each other.
Exactly. I always wonder.
Like they frown upon it, but there's no law, there's nothing that prevents you from discussing it. But they know if you discuss it amongst each other, you'll start finding out that, the stereotypical name Billy or something. Like Billy is over here making, 1.5 times more than you, and he's doing, 80% of what you're doing. And they're like, Billy, what you doing? How you making this bread? This makes no sense.
You're not even probably doing 20% of what you're doing.
I'm not gonna lie. I always ask myself, like I want to know what my counterparts are making, because I always questioned that if I was lowball when I got my offer. Because like then I got promoted and I tried to dispute it. But one thing I also noticed is I feel like white people are willing to leave the position that they just got offered versus Black people. Because like I was not ready to walk away from that offer from when I got promoted versus, and I feel like even though I asked for a raise, I didn't get it, and I caved in because I was not willing to walk away. And if you're not willing to walk away, you're already lost in the dispute, right?
Yeah, I look at it. Yeah, I guess so. I would turn that one over to Glenn because I know he had a segment on that he spoke to it.
Yeah, like my thing is when it comes to the employment situation, like before you get into any job, you got to know what at least the base salary is. You know what I mean? So you can do that nowadays on a simple Google search. And if your job description comes back and it lines up that, hey, I'm doing X, et cetera, all these bullet points, then you should at least be asking for the base salary, if not a little bit more. It's kind of like how you negotiate a house, right? You trying to sell your property, you're going to go a little bit higher than your actual price, and you work your way down from there. And I think that's the same way you should go about your salary negotiations as well. So, no one's going to show you, hey, this is what everybody else is making, but at least if you go online or do some research, you can find like a general base salary and work your angle from there.
Yeah. The other thing I would add is, and this is probably for everybody, right? Especially if you've already been there, like for the most part, right? They've invested so much money in you being an employee there. Like, I actually think that if it's a good employer and also you've established yourself, like, I think you may have, I think we sometimes don't understand how much wiggle room sometimes we do have in those situations, but also, you should also just be prepared to be like, yo, this is what I'm worth, right? You'll be able to get another job. Like, I really feel like, especially, I know that they say like the biggest pay raise you're going to get is like when you first accept your first offer or whatever. I think someone was basically saying like, that's your opportunity to get your biggest pay raise that you're ever going to have at the one job, right? When you're negotiating right in the middle. So yeah, I would say, I know it's hard and I know it's kind of COVID time. So maybe we'll say this stuff in a year, right? But to be right, know your worth, right? If you have experience, if you have good education, like I don't think you should be, or you take it and then look for another job, right? Maybe you fight for that money. If they don't do it, then you say, you know what, have the opportunity in your free time to look for a new job. But to me, I don't think in today's world, with how many opportunities there are, like I don't think you should be. I don't think you should settle. Obviously, you got to pay the bills, right? So you gotta think about how you go about doing that, right? But maybe you just accept that offer, and then you know on your free time look for a better opportunity, right?
For sure, know your worth, right? I'm worth $1 million and then some, with some incentives, and then I work my way down from there.
Like you're in the wrong industry, right?
Yeah, no employer, no employer is really going to pay you what you're really worth, right? Like for the most part, right? Like you're almost never going to really be. No employer is almost going to go out of their way to pay you, you know, the more than maybe you're worth, right?
You never know. It's worth a shot, right?
Some are, but I think that's a very small.
Independence
I think that's a
podcast.
minority, right? I think a minority is gonna say, "Oh, wait, you only asked for a $20,000 raise. Like you actually should get a $40,000." Like how many opportunities? How many times do you think that's really gonna happen? Right?
I know nothing about basketball, and I'm gonna make a basketball like saying it, right? So they say like you miss every shot you don't take, right? That's how it goes. So when it comes down to negotiating, of course, be smart. Don't be like, yeah, I'm like, pay me 1.5 million for an entry level job being a janitor. No, what I'm saying is just that you know your worth, you know your value. If there's upward mobility within that job, okay, this is what I'm willing to take as of right now, but this is where I want to end at. And as you're going through it, if you're not getting to that upward mobility, then yeah, by all means, walk out. You have the experience, you have the training, you have the knowledge, and you seek something else. Don't feel as though that you're cornered to the point where you can't negotiate. Like I agree with Dre. What are you saying? And I agree with Glenn. Know what you're worth, and do your Google search. I mean, some people like sometimes it's like a range, right? Like, oh, it's like 50 to like 70K. Like, fuck that. I want the 70K. No, you'll get 65. Okay, that's better than the 50. What about 67? And then you try to finagle it and be smart about it. And that's my take on it.
I mean, it's easier said than done though, because sometimes when you do dispute the pay and they come back and say, oh, this is a good amount. We observe the rest of your counterparts and this is the range they are falling into. And you do have the research and the number, like, okay, well, I feel like I should get a little bit more pay. If you're not willing to like potentially walk away from that job, you already lost. That's what I've learned.
I think D-Black's going to appreciate this one. I'm like, what's my fucking name? I'm not them, right? Start bringing it to the table, and it's all on you. It's all about whenever you go out there, how comfortable you feel. I can't tell you to argue for one thing over another. If you're comfortable with the 50, take the 50. You may actually need the 50. I'm not telling you how to manage and live your life, but what I am saying, get paid for what you're worth and what you know and what you can do. With that being said, we're gonna start closing this one out. This has been a lovely conversation with all you beautiful, handsome men.
Oh, already.
For departing words, I'm going to start with Glenn. How do you feel truly about racism? Do you think racism will be eradicated at some point? And what is your message to people when they're in a racist situation?
Well, I think shortly, racism sucks, and it's still prevalent today. And if I ever think it will be eradicated, no, I don't think it will ever be eradicated, not as long as the majority continues to hold access to resources and power. Like, this feels like it's not the racism that maybe our ancestors and our people and our kin were subjected to back in the days, where it was a little bit more hard. Well, not a little bit, it was very harsh, direct abuse and harm to your body, where it's just pretty much like a struggle to survive and to just coexist. And to now where it's integrated into our systems, where it's very hard as a people to kind of excel. But I feel like ultimately, rather than focus on the racism, once more focus on empowering ourselves, push for legislature that's going to boost the Black community, stay informed, not just on Black matters, but even worldly matters, what's going on in your community, what's going on in politics. There should just be some general level interest in that. Like, just stay informed. Don't get caught up in like just Black culture alone. Like, stay informed what's going on in the world. And I think that's the best way we can continue to excel ourselves and inform others. And that's my talking point.
D-Black?
I guess in the ideal sense, I want to say that racism won't be around forever. I mean, because in theory, it's like, well, if there's no races, then if there's one race, then there can't be racism, right? Because ultimately we all would have mixed, little, black and white babies all over the place, and everybody be mixed, so there wouldn't be any races. But the thing is that as human beings, we always find a way to distinguish ourselves from one another. So if racism goes away, then we'll still have sexism. Then when sexism goes away, I mean, that'll never go away because
ageism,
sizism. Sizism, then economic, discrimination. Like we always find a way to basically say, I mean, I'm better than this person or I'm better than this group. So I mean, ideally, I would hope that as a society, as a people, we grow past that point where we stop making those type of the delineations from each other. But it's probably never going to happen, unfortunately.
Francis?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for all the conversation. This has been really good. For me, I hope racism does come to an end. And like I said earlier, I feel like our world is changing, and some of us, we just really have no chance. We have, things is going to happen, and it's just, and sometimes we just gotta like also learn, like Glenn was saying earlier, we have to not look at everything from a race lens, right? Because when we kind of talk about, not getting a job because I'm Black, sometimes is it what kind of degree do you have? Are you, looking into if for me, because I've personally kind of went through that, and it's hard for me to say it's due to my Blackness. And, when I got a better degree, my opportunity changed, and I was able to get a better job, get a better pay, get an increased pay. And I think to Dre's point, I feel like my company is investing in my future. So I think that is also something we have to be consistent of, and just be mindful of. But if you ever, and as far as, standing up against racism or discrimination or stuff like that, when you experience it, I think it's really important to speak up, especially in situations where you have the opportunity to. I understand, the fear of the consequence or the negative side of that, and that's a true concern that we have to be mindful of, and we just have to be more calculated on how we do it. And I think people just have to be open-minded and be willing to have those uncomfortable conversations from the Black and the white side. And I hope our white counterpart do a internal search within their lives and their partner, their families, and how some of the things that they are doing in their family. Because I know sometimes when we self-examine what is going on, we later discover, things that we do not like. And instead of fixing it, we tend to kind of cover it up and dump it all in a closet and close it up. So from both sides, we need to be mindful and just do the work. We have to do the work.
Dre?
I think the biggest thing is, I think that racism, I think this country was kind of founded on racism. I feel like it'll always kind of be in the fabric of our society, hopefully less and less. I think probably it's already an issue now. And I think what is going to be the bigger issue in this country is definitely kind of more of an economic thing, right? I think it's going to be more about the haves versus the have-nots. I think it's going to be is the next big kind of differentiator of people, other than their race, right? As maybe as we start to become a more homogenous society, exactly as kind of D Black was saying, right? It's always going to kind of move on to something else. And then also, I guess, piggybacking off of Francis, I think the biggest thing is, I think if you are in a position of privilege, you should speak up. Me personally, and again, I guess also echoing Glenn, right? I think I'm really going to just focus on my community, right? People within my circle, whether it's giving them opportunities on things that I'm learning about finance or home buying or whatever, right? I think it's within my ability to focus on like what my circle is, right? Anything outside of that circle, I personally don't know if I can have an impact on it, right? So all the people around me, right? If they say something sexist or racist or whatever, it's on me to say something to them. If it's someone outside of that circle, I'm probably not going to say nothing. Because I'll whatever, we won't get into that, but yeah, I think yeah, it's about being a really good citizen, right, in this world, right? So I think that if everyone does a better job of being a better person, right, then I think ultimately we'll live in a better society and have less of these issues. But
yeah.
Awesome.
All I can control is myself in the people who are around me.
Facts. Each one teach one, pretty much. Every race, sex, age, color matters. So if you are in a position of privilege, pull that underprivileged counterpart up, and let's keep doing that for every person that's underprivileged. But every time we do that, we start gaining that level of equality. I'm looking at a rainbow coalition in this motherfucker. So we got this. We can do this. Like Dre said, everyone be outstanding citizens. Do the right thing. Control what's in your circle when you're comfortable. Make the right choices and decisions when you can. Everyone had a valid point to make. And with that, bye.
Peace out.
Peace.
And that concludes today's episode, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. As a matter of fact, check us out on Instagram or Twitter at JJC Podcast for our post discussion question. If you're a Black business owner and like to be featured on the show, shoot us an email at jjcpod@gmail.com. Additional details in the description field below. As always, likes, comments, and shares are humbly appreciated. Subscribe to be notified when our next episode releases. But until then, stay blessed. Peace.